Hi, American Recap here. This movie begins with a young Natalie watching Pretty Woman on TV, which she enjoys until her mother comes in and tells her that she shouldn't watch romantic comedies, since ladies like herself and Natalie don't live happy endings, like the beautiful women in TV shows. Natalie becomes sad and loses interest in the movie. 25 years later, Natalie is now working as an architect in New York City. She is known among her coworkers as the coffee lover and a pushover. Natalie has only two friends. One is Josh, her coworker, and the second is Whitney, her assistant. A new client then arrives at Natalie's place of work for business. He's a handsome billionaire named Blake. As Natalie joins them for the presentation, Blake mistook Natalie's coffee for his prompting her boss to send her to get Blake a new one. Natalie later discovers Whitney crying while watching a movie. Natalie chastises her, ranting about how romantic comedies are a waste of time and create unrealistic expectations in their viewers. Josh then tries to invite Natalie to hang out with him, but she dismisses him. Whitney then tells Natalie that if she were more open-minded, more people would notice her, and she could be in a relationship with her dream man sooner than she can think of. The next scene shows Natalie on her way home at the train station when she is approached by a man who tries to chat with her. He seemed polite, so they exchanged greetings, but he quickly attacks Natalie and attempts to steal her bag. They battle for it, and she manages to disable him. But as she flees, Natalie collides head-on to a pole, knocking herself out. Natalie wakes up at a hospital where she is greeted by a handsome doctor who immediately begins flirting with her. She became paranoid over his advance, presumably because she recently woke up from a coma, and she later leaves the hospital. As she leaves the hospital, she realizes that New York City is no longer smells like garbage, but rather like Los Angeles. Natalie walks into the street and gets hit by a limo driven by Blake, the billionaire. He is now more charming to her. He drops her by her house, leaving her his phone number on flower petals, which he expects Natalie to remember. Despite the fact he randomly throw her the petals, she enters her apartment and discovers that it is larger, prettier, and that she owns every pair of shoes ever manufactured, all of which are perfectly fits. Her dog is now well-groomed and well-behaved, Donnie. Her grumpy next-door neighbor also treated her as though they were gay. Her best friends. Natalie's perception of the world became increasingly strange. Goes for a walk with Josh few days later, and while walking through the park, they come across a woman who is. Josh offers to assist her, and she turns out to be Isabella, a model who Natalie believes Josh has always admired on a billboard outside their office. There appears to be an instant spark between Isabella and Josh, and they immediately went on a date, leaving Natalie alone. Natalie kept walking around by herself and tripped on a stone. A strange handsome man compliments. She continued walking and walked into the midst of random people dancing in the park, and she felt like she is stuck in a romantic comedy movie. Natalie then attempts to knock herself out again in the hopes of returning to her normal life. Prior to the railway station incident, Natalie starts pestering other people at the train station, hoping they'll attack and knock her out. But this doesn't happen. She then attempts to step in front of a moving train, but she gets held back by a cop who is literally named Officer Han. He arrests her for pestering others at the station, and she was given the option of calling a friend to bail her out. She decides to contact Blake, the billionaire, using her only call chance. She tosses the petals on which Blake had written his number into the air, and the petals rearrange themselves magically in the right order, and Natalie dials Blake. Blake then comes to bail Natalie from detention, and Natalie felt like she has to fall in love with her in order for her to get out of this new alternate world she found herself in. The next day, Natalie goes on a date with Blake, looking glammed up after having her makeup done by her now friendly gay neighbor, Donnie. The date ends well, resulting in a romantic kiss in the middle of the street. The two then return to Blake's place to get intimate. The next morning, Natalie tries to have sex with Blake just to actually experience. But when she jumps on Blake, a loop occurs, causing Blake to enter the room again, saying the same thing he said the first time he came in, as if he never came in before, and as if Natalie never jumped on him. Blake then tells Natalie that he loves her, but it has no effect on Natalie because she is still trapped in this alternate world. Josh, Natalie's coworker and male friend, later pays her a visit. The two laugh and joke, and were actually having genuine chemistry, until Blake showed up and ruined the mood by being a jerk to Josh, causing Josh to leave Natalie, and Blake then run into Josh and Isabella in a restaurant the next day, and they get invited to Isabella's home in the Hamptons for a party. Natalie and Blake attends the party, and during the party, Natalie and Josh take another stroll together, indicating that Natalie is now in love with Josh after Josh hooked Isabella. But Josh and Isabella announce that they are getting married the next. Natalie discovers the next morning on the wedding day that Blake is attempting to pass off her ideas as his own. He defends it by saying she won't have to work when she's with him. She enjoys her job as an architect, so she instantly breaks up with Blake. She confides in her gay friend, Donnie, who gives her some encouraging words based on his experience. Natalie then realizes, thanks to Donnie's advice, that if she loves Josh, she must go stop Josh and Isabella's wedding. Natalie then went to the church wedding that faithful day, gave a big speech, and almost admits that she loves Josh and that he should be with her instead. But she has a quick rethink and realizes she loves herself, and that is the lesson she was supposed to. Natalie leaves the wedding and decides to steal Josh and Isabella's brand new wedding car. But she becomes distracted and crashes into a wall. Natalie wakes up in another hospital where the doctor is a stud, and she fears she is still trapped in the alternate world. However, the real doctor enters and orders the start to leave. Natalie pulls a needle out of her arm and yells, realizing she is now back to her real. She has been in coma since the incident at the train station. With the thief, she dashes home, relieved to see her lousy apartment and boring dog. She discovers that Donnie is gay in real life and that he is a weed dealer, prompting Natalie to hug him. She returns to work and reaffirms her friendship with Whitney, but she states unequivocally that she must refrain from watching movies at work. She then goes to her boss's office to give a presentation about Blake's project. Natalie's pitch appeals to Blake and the boss. Natalie then walks over to Josh's cubicle and tells him he shouldn't be living in a fantasy, staring at the billboard of Isabella. Josh then gets up to make it clear to her that he was never looking at the billboard, but rather he was always looking at her Natalie. She is touched, and the two kiss. Natalie walks out for coffee, and she is greeted downstairs by Whitney, who points out that now that she has made it to her dream job and has a guy who worships her, it's like she is in an actual romantic comedy. Natalie scoffs at the idea and says all that needs to happen is a musical number. The movie ends here happily. Thank you for watching, and as support to my channel, please like and subscribe. See you again in the next video.